Hey folks, welcome to episode 2 of Utopian Cartography, the video series to illuminate our path out of this neoliberal leviathan. Today I want to talk about whether or not the frameworks that we have been thinking in for some time now are worth trying to rejuvenate, and whether or not the Democratic Party is worth trying to fix or bring back from the dead or uncorrupt or try to make into a party of the people, or whether we should just move on because that is impossible. There's a big movement right now to try to reform the Democratic Party. They're calling it the Justice Democrats. And there's a lot of people pushing back on that idea with basically the argument that the corruption goes too deep. I mean, I'm sympathetic to that view. I think party politics in America has never been democratic. It's always been a veneer over an oligarchy. And so the idea that we could somehow transform the Democratic Party into something that we want to be a part of because it would actually represent the people, I think that unfortunately, I think it might not be a realistic strategy. So I don't think that representative politics is something that we should plan to keep. Like, the disintermediation that the internet has enabled between people in society makes it so that we don't need rulers anymore. The original purpose of the Constitution was to keep the aristocratic structure of society in place, but to basically boot out the priests and the voodoo of Christendom and replace it with a rational structure like capitalism. And so capitalism slowly just replaced the church, but the actual power structure of society remained unchanged. So we have illusions of freedom, like Pepsi versus Coke, like that's the extent of the choices that we get. But they frame it so that they make us think that we have democracy. But these structures cannot bring us democracy. There's another great POS line where it says, "You think a president can represent you?" The idea that we have a president is absurd. The two-party duopoly is designed to perpetuate the status quo. It's so basic. I don't understand how all these liberals who were becoming disillusioned with the Democratic Party are all of a sudden buying into this whole idea that, yeah, we can just reform it and then it'll represent us. Bullshit. We've heard that story before. Like, it doesn't work that way. Like, they've designed it to not work that way, very ingeniously. Debbie, the host of Same Progressive, has been making a really strong case against this whole Justice Democrats thing by pointing out that they're just replicating the Bernie Sanders strategy of raising $27 from each person and then we'll get our person elected. But that just happened, and as she said, failed spectacularly. We won! Bernie won! But the voting machines are just so anachronistic that they're so... As revealed in the Podesta emails, Hillary Clinton's campaign's whole strategy, they called it the Pied Piper strategy, to elevate Donald Trump, who they assumed was so terrible he would be easy to beat, but they would focus most of their illegal electioneering on Bernie Sanders. So they stole the election from Bernie Sanders and then tried to use him as a sheepdog to just herd everybody into the Democratic Party to vote for Hillary, and it didn't work because people aren't having it. Like, the people on the left who see through the veil were just like, nah, sorry, not buying it. And we either didn't vote or we voted for Jill Stein. And I don't, I don't have allegiance to the Green Party, but it's just, it is less corrupt than the Democratic Party, and that's why they've been so marginalized. I mean, they've been very successful in co-opting and destroying all of the revolutionary leftist movements in the 60s and 70s. And so that includes black liberation, women's liberation, environmental consciousness. Each of those three main pillars of the 60s cultural revolution have been fully infiltrated and poisoned and hollowed out from the inside. And that was possible because the neoliberals controlled the media. As Michael Stern says, the architects of control, they controlled all the media, and especially after the Vietnam War when they were like, oh yeah, we need to make sure we don't actually show the people what's going on because that makes them mad. And then they're like, oh yeah, let's just pop Kennedy and silence the opposition, the real opposition, and basically prop up this phony opposition like the Democratic Party to basically be a punching bag, and as like Cenk calls them, the Washington Generals, professional losers. Like their job is to go out there and lose. Like Cenk talks about how the Democrats are paid to lose. That the funders, they fund strong Republicans and weak Democrats because Republican ideology is more nakedly capitalistic and exploitative and fuck you if you're not like me and ain't got shit, cause sorry, not my problem. Like, the Republicans are more shameless about that, than the Christian ones, but don't forget about that ultimate irony. Basically what I'm trying to say is that this whole ruse of electoral politics, the whole fake, Dylan Ratigan would call it professional wrestling, because it's just like, you're terrible, and no, you're terrible, and blah, 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 but all the punches are not actually really landing, you know what I mean? They're not actually doing damage to each other. They're really just putting on a show for the masses to make it look like the people in charge are somehow wrestling with profound ideas, even though they really agree about all the same terrible, awful ideology and just disagree around the edges about the things that aren't as consequential. Like Jimmy Dore always says that the Democrats are Republicans who are in favor of abortion. I feel like that's really crucial, because one of the most profound things that I have learned is that what we now call the social issues, mainly abortion and gay rights, those two things were elevated to the front page of the national dialogue on purpose, because they don't really affect the main thing that fucking matters, which is the economy. The class antagonisms are the only thing that matters. But politics has become this whole game of talking about random shit and everybody just arguing over bullshit. And then when it really gets down to the most important thing, which is economics, it's like criticizing neoliberalism has been so taboo for 30, 40 years that, I don't know, people take it for granted, and when that is actually challenged, people just turn the conversation into something that's not productive, and it just goes into rah, rah, rah. And the two-party system was always meant to be that way. It was designed to preserve the system that's in place and only allow incremental or marginal change and not change to the fundamentals of the system. The whole notion of constitutionalism is a belief in this sacred document that somehow gives us democracy. And I've actually heard people describe the difficulty of changing anything as a virtue of the Constitution. The idea that it protects us from crazy people in charge is the ultimate, success of a constitutional republic, is that, this monolithic rule structure just fucking stays there, and it's like, when they pass a law, it's like super hard to change it. And that might have been relevant or a desirable trait in a ruling institution hundreds of years ago, before the age of information and the acceleration of the pace of change that we're in the middle of right now, that we're at the fucking base of the hockey stick where shit is about to get crazy, and we're stuck with this political system where we can't do shit until something like what just happened happens, and we get a crazy person in charge, and we're like, oh, thank God for the deep state, he's not really going to be able to change that much, because, the real power structure stays in place. But then he goes and signs all these executive orders, just circumvents the rest of the process, and then, there's a segment of the population that's like, oh yeah, fuck the rest of the government, it's good that he's just doing shit and not listening to Congress and the judiciary, and yeah, actually, scratch that whole last part. My point in all of this is just to try to refocus people on the question of whether the Democratic Party is something that is worth trying to rejuvenate, or whether it's hopeless and so corrupt that we need to move on. Like, one of my favorite quotes is, you can't reach for anything new until you let go of yesterday's junk. Or, and a similar sentiment is, you can't cross the ocean unless you have the courage to leave the shore. So I think of the two-party duopoly as an armful of yesterday's junk, or, a fear of what's next, so people stay on the beach and stay with the Democratic Party. So, Jimmy and lots of people were saying during the election, we can't just vote for Hillary because of the fear of Trump, because there's going to be an even worse Trump next time. The establishment left, the center left, the corporatists, are always going to be able to present somebody, a scary fascist on the right, to say, oh yeah, vote for us because we're less authoritarian than them. That will preserve the status quo indefinitely, and indefinitely means the end of the fucking world, because the ecosystem is collapsing around us. The whole fucking ecosystem is like crumbling around us, and so the people who don't understand that we have to fundamentally transform the way we live, and that means abolishing everything about the government as we know it. which is, as Marx said, the bourgeois state is merely a committee for managing the common affairs of the bourgeoisie. So the government is designed to prevent the kind of revolutionary change that all of us want and need. And so until this whole notion of this phony representation is done away with and decision-making is dissolved down to the people who are actually immediately involved in the effects of the decisions that are being made. Until all the stakeholders are listened to and brought into the process, then we're just not going to be able to come up with solutions that are comprehensive enough to really solve the problems that are facing us. And there are certain problems that if we don't address them, we'll just end up in an evolutionary cul-de-sac. So people who think that we can just rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic really need to wake up. That's why I guess I'm dedicating my whole life to doing as much as I can, putting all my energies towards trying to convince people that the actions we need to take are bigger than people realize. I don't want it to happen, but I'm just saying that if we don't get our act together as a species, like they say we're at type 0 civilization, or type 0.5 or 0.7 civilization or whatever. If we don't fucking make it to a type 1 civilization fucking soon, then we're cursing all future generations to either misery or non-existence. Our civilization can collapse. And if we keep destroying the ecosystem like we are right now, then that's exactly what's going to happen. We're going to fall too. We are going to crumble too. Humanity will not be supported by our habitat if we continue the way we're going. And I guess this all comes down to the debate between reform and revolution. Reformists think that revolution is impossible, so we have to alleviate the suffering of the least among us in the incremental ways that we can and that we have the power to within the system. That's the reformist mentality. And that's these Justice Democrats and all the people who think that the Democratic Party is salvageable. Revolutionaries think that revolution is possible and is imminent. And we understand that the proletarian uprising will only come when people are fucked hard enough that they won't take it anymore. So reforms, like things that incrementally alleviate the suffering of people who are the worst off under capitalism, that invariably postpones the revolution. Because by alleviating that suffering, it makes it so people think, this system's not that bad, it could be worse, people don't want to give up on the shitty status quo because they've been presented with this terrifying possibility of something even worse. David Graeber says, they're hardly arguing that capitalism is even a good system anymore. They're just arguing that the only other possibility is something even worse. I thought that was a great framing of the pro-capitalist argument. That it's just the best we can do. Sorry, if you want to do sharing, then you'll end up in a fucking tyrannical Soviet Russia situation as if it's 1970, and the computer's never been invented. We don't have the internet or fucking solar power and 3D printing and all this shit. So don't buy the hype about this is the best we can do, or that, we have to work on saving the Democratic Party because the third party is hopeless, blah, blah, blah. Because we have to think long term. It is unfathomable to me that the two-party system as it exists today will exist in 20 years. I don't even think it'll exist in 10 years. The political parties of the 21st century will not be these same political parties that we have right now. In the next election, we're going to see the emergence of a handful of new political parties. And they'll be able to gain traction because of the utter, absurd, ridiculous failure of the two parties that we've been dealing with for the past hundreds of years. And I believe that the political party that will ultimately rise to the top and basically be the last representative political party will be the Pirate Party. Because their whole essence is the internet, basically. I'll say that. Basically what I'm trying to say is that representative politics itself is the amphibious stage in between absolutist feudal monarchy and real civilization, actual civilization, where we have peace and freedom and community and solidarity and all the things that we want. Those are in a different realm of existence. The representative governmental system that we have now, constitutional representative democracy, it's not going to last forever. It's paper was only invented a couple thousand years ago. And paper is losing its utility right now as we speak because of digital platforms, because of screen technology. So the whole function of paper in the history of civilization was to make writing efficient enough, the written word efficient enough, to bring us from a state of non-literacy to a state of hyperliteracy or post-literacy, where our relationship with text and with symbolic language is transcending the two-dimensional realm that is possible to capture on a piece of paper. You know what I mean? Like, so the whole purpose of it was as a transitional medium, so that, you know, we could not possibly have gone straight from papyrus or, you know, clay tablets or whatever. We couldn't have gone straight from that to computers. You know, the jump is too great, so paper was to fill that gap. Paper was the amphibious transitional medium in between clay tablets and the computer. In the same way, representative democracy, you know, constitutional government is the amphibious transitional stage between feudalism, between absolutist rule, dictatorial rule, and a truly libertine society where people are free to do whatever the fuck they want. But we're not there yet, you know, like we're still in that paper phase. Max Egan calls the world governed by legislation, a paper-based reality. You know, this is real because I wrote it down on this piece of paper and see, here it is, therefore it's real. You know, like, so a law, you know, some guy in a suit writes some shit and signs it, and therefore you have to obey that shit, or otherwise they're coming with some guns to take you to a cage. You know, that shit is not gonna happen in the future. I love how Jacques Fresco says, as long as we have poverty and war, we're not civilized yet. And so we're still in the process of figuring that out, figuring out how to live together peacefully. And we have obviously not figured that out. And pervasive competition that capitalism claims as its main virtue, main ruling ethic, and that's why capitalism is so great, because we have to compete with each other. That is not the future. That is the transitional stage. Like, I was just thinking a couple days ago about how a chant that they use at protests a lot is, "This is what democracy looks like." And I was just thinking about how street protest is a manifestation of the power of the people, in exactly the same sense that a child throwing a temper tantrum in a supermarket or a store or whatever to try to force their parent to buy them a new Hot Wheels car or whatever the fuck. You know, sometimes if a child throws a big enough temper tantrum that's obnoxious enough, and the parent is in a pliable enough mood at that moment, then sure, the kid can have power and, you know, get their parent to buy them that toy. But, you know, so I guess that's power, you know, in a sense. But if that's how we want to define the power of the people, then we have a really limited imagination as to what democracy could mean. That I don't think is enough. Just because the participatory capacity of the platforms that we are developing right now means that this whole notion of representation is no longer necessary. It's obsolete now. So that's why I think party politics as we know it is not going to last that much longer. So the inspiration for this video came yesterday when I realized that there's an analogy to be drawn between that vertex question of whether the Democratic Party is salvageable and a question that I've been putting at the top of the list for a while now as the most important question, which is whether humanity is worth preserving in the long term. You know, I have misanthropic tendencies. People have not been nice to me in my life, so I tend to not be hopeful about humanity as such, and that's why I think that was one of the most appealing things about Marxism in the very beginning, is the way that he frames the material conditions of life for the working person as the determinative factor in what makes them behave the way that they do. And so that's what made me appreciate the fact that poor people are not ultimately responsible for their own shitty behavior, because it is a product of the system. Like, they are a product of the system. And this is why the singularity has been the single most animating factor in my thinking for the past 4 or 5 years, because the technologies that are converging to manifest what we call the singularity are things that so fundamentally change the material conditions of humanity that will not only will it put the very definition of humanity in question, but it will fundamentally transform the way that we relate to the world and each other. And so economics can't possibly function the way it does now in the future, where all the productive labor in society can be automated and things can be just manufactured out of recycled materials. There's just no reason to imagine that the economy would function the same way at all, because the material conditions will be completely different. It seems like a straightforward line of deductive reasoning to me. I mean, I really think we'll figure it out, like people will figure it out. It's just a matter of how long that takes, and so that's why it's up to us to fucking quicken that shit, make it not take so long. That scene in Transformers where one of the alien robots says, "Why are we even trying to help the human race? They're such a violent species." And another one of the Transformers says, "Yes, but they're young. Yes, but they're still so young." That's why I think about everything about the way that we exist as transitional. I mean, in addition to the fact that everything's always changing and evolution is the only force in the universe, we also happen to be at a boiling point. We happen to be at that transition. We happen to be so blessed as to live at that point where we can see the end, where the light at the end of the tunnel is not way out there. It's within our vision if we can look. In the movie The Watchmen, there's a part where Mr. Manhattan, who is the dude who can see into the future or whatever, that's his power, he can't see past this certain point. And I don't remember if it was 2012 in the movie but there's a point where this clairvoyant can't see beyond, and that's the singularity. That's why we call it a singularity, because we don't know what's beyond it. And I think that in the same way that we can't accept democratic politics as the best we can do in terms of progressive change and having the mechanisms of our institutions reflect the will of the people, there are no political solutions, only technological ones. The rest is propaganda. In the same way that transhumanist technologies like brain-machine interfacing and prosthetics and stuff like that, it's technology that is going to push us to a whole new set of circumstances. So it's really a revolutionary project to try to take control of language and forge new paths in linguistics and ways of talking about these things. It's all new, we need new shit. We need new systems, we need new institutions, we need new ways of thinking, we need new myths, we need new everything, because what we have is not working. And that's why I've been using the hashtag #DemExit a lot, because I feel like I know so many people who are just lamenting Donald Trump, but are like, oh yeah, how do we get him next time? How do we turn the country blue again, or whatever? How do we regain that blue wall in the Midwest, or whatever? And I want to get it across to as many people as possible that is a losing strategy. That is not the way to the future. Look up post-left anarchy. I'm going to talk about it in my next video, because I think it's the best way we can think about politics in the future is beyond the institutional frameworks that we have now. Neoliberal politics are obsolete. We cannot capitulate to their system anymore. It should be obvious by now that it will not work. So the best thing we can do is put our political energies into something that will work. And that's direct action, organizing the community, waking people up. Malcolm X said the biggest mistake of the movement is trying to get action out of a sleeping community. First you've got to wake people up, and then you'll get action. So that's why I think that the best thing we can do is wake up as many people as we can. And basically all I'm trying to say is unalienate your political energies from the duopoly, and unalienate your spiritual energies, for the lack of a better term, from humanism, because humanism is a short-term strategy. Humanism is a refutation of theology, and we need a new way of thinking about the world that's more than just saying Santa Claus isn't real. We have to move to the positive phase, which is telling people the way the world should be, not just the way that it shouldn't be. And that's going to come from outside the political institutions that we're familiar with. So I know it's a really, really big step intellectually and philosophically to basically leave the state religion that is believing in representative government, but apostasy is literally the only way forward towards a true worldview that, actually has the potential to exist into the future, where shit is not going to be like it is now. Well, anyways, obviously I could go on, but I'll wrap this one up and save my discussion of post-left anarchy till the next video. So, thank you so much everybody for watching, and please like and subscribe and comment, and I don't know, I just love talking about this stuff, and so I would love to talk about it with you.